This is Damien from AtHope, and I'm an axiological atheist, and we're going to start the meeting. So, why don't we start with you? Tell us who you are. And
how about this? I just want to be the voice on that. I'll just be
there
the
you
voice
go.
that shows up on the video.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm an atheist. Been one for many years now, and I enjoy everything to do with free thought and learning and sharing with new people and people that have been free thinkers for many years. I'm glad to be here.
So, I'm Jim. So I underwent a religious upbringing, went to church and Sunday school and so on, until about the age of 16, 17 when I decided I don't actually believe any of this. So I've been an atheist ever since. And I'm anxious to understand, I would love to understand all the stories about religion that are documented through the Bible and other books. And what's the actual facts that lie behind all of that?
Irish?
Scots.
Scotch, okay, sorry.
Something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hear a little bit of an accent, but it's not really.
A little bit of an accent.
A little bit of an
You can
accent. Well, he's
understand
talking
it
he's
well.
talking quietly. Maybe when he
I
gets
know.
going, it comes out more solidly.
Now, I'm Damien, and I'm an axiological atheist, which is a value theory or a value science atheist. And I was a religionist. My whole life was raised in it, and a religious cult, and then later an evangelical Christian. And I was a religionist until 36, and I went to college to be a drug and alcohol counselor and had to learn about religion. And once they had me learn about religion, it was pretty quick that I realized that halfway through the class on the Bible that this is all bullshit and I can't believe it. So I immediately, because I like truth, and I realized, wow, this is not truth, and I immediately became an atheist. I didn't even know what an atheist was. I just knew that, wow, I don't believe this shit anymore. So.
I'm Cindy. I was raised without religion. I think my older two brothers had been raised with some religious background, but not much. By the time I came along, there's 10 years between my next older brother and myself. By the time I came along, my dad was fed up with it. He didn't like the money-making schemes that were going on, and that if you were just the average poor family who wanted to go to church to be good people, you didn't get the same clout and benefits that somebody who had money. If they showed up in a new car with new clothes and kids that were all dressed prim and proper and perfect, then you got the attention of the focus from the church. And my dad just realized then, he goes, why are we spinning our wheels trying to fit in when clearly we won't fit in because we don't have the same economic background that a lot of these other folks do that are getting the attention. So I basically, religion was not important to me. It wasn't a big deal. I thought, a lot of my friends were religious, but I thought they were just a little off, that was all. And it wasn't until the political scheme started to hit with religion that I went from being an N-O-N-E nun to an atheist. And I said, I can't take this crap anymore. I basically had to say, I have to come out about it, I have to be vocal about it, and unless other people are willing to do the same thing, unless, there could have been 5 people that I went to school with that felt the same way, but they didn't know I felt that way, so they kept their mouths shut too. And I don't think, it's funny how people that I never took as being religious, as adults with children and grandchildren now, they are just pushing the whole religious thing like crazy. It's like, well, but that's what I had when I was growing up. And I thought, but you weren't like that when you were growing up. You didn't push it onto other people. Why do you push it onto people now? So that's I'm just pushing back, basically. That's my whole goal, is to just say, look, you can't push people around anymore. It's not your business. And I'm not taking it. And even my son, who was raised without religion, and I would say he's an atheist because he doesn't feel the same things that I feel, since he hasn't seen the influence of religion on him personally.
Yeah.
I think as a woman, you tend to find it much more prevalent in the legislation over the last few years. Even though it doesn't affect me personally, it affects me because I know how it will affect other women. So, that's it.
I'm Arif Khan. I invited Jim to the meeting today. Cindy is sort of the host.
You were kind of a spin-off of another group that we felt wasn't as productive, so we're trying to at least be more organized and a little bit more verbal from everybody, not just one person.
Yeah. So I think we need to hook him up with that. Yeah. I personally was born in a family which is very tolerant, even though I was born a Muslim. When I was young, I sort of saw myself as more agnostic, more tolerant. But I think as I've gotten older and as things have changed in the world, which to my surprise, I've sort of started thinking that, yeah, there needs to be more said and more done than just standing by, hoping that peace will come, So, and I was very surprised to learn last meeting that there was a sense of persecution, certainly, I don't know what I would call it, a sense of fear, but almost bordering on it. And I was, again, surprised when I was telling Jim this morning that the Parisian magazine has decided to respect now out of fear.
Now, which magazine you said?
This is the magazine that made all those cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad.
Oh, yes.
Charlie
So
Hebdo.
now Charlie Hebdo, something like that. So they just decided to respect Islam. And Salman Rushdie, not surprisingly, comes out and says, no, it's out of fear you're doing it.
Right.
So fear is a big issue that we got to think about. I think, what is it about and what we need to do? Because I personally don't have any sense of that. But I think,
you know what, I thought a lot about this, and have been influenced by John Shook as well in this, and that I think the response needs to be strategic to religion, and what that means is that it can't just be a negative critique, because if it's just a negative critique, it doesn't go anywhere. There has to be some type of positive structure that replaces the things that are being criticized, that gives it a new foundation or a new place for people to go, new communities, stuff like that. And I think without that, then the criticism is doomed, because it
Do you
won't.
think humanism can fulfill that need and kind of take what's good from religion as far as the socialization and empathy tenfold maybe from humanism versus religion? I think that religion tends to pick and choose carefully who they support, and I think humanism just sees human need more than anything. Do you think that is a good way to
Well, I think it's
expand?
just community in general. That whether it's humanistic or whatever, but community in general bridges the gap to some extent. And yeah, I think I am optimistic about humanism because the values of humanism are rooted in reality.
Right.
So, I mean, there's something to be optimistic about there. It's not just based on fairy tales.
Right, critical thinking is a big part of
Yeah.
humanism, which
But it seems like humanism can genuinely be shared by religious and non-religious
That is
people.
correct. That is correct. Yeah, the origins of humanism are actually Christianity. So the origins of humanism to begin with are religious. So when people say that they're humanist, you're not saying you're not religious. In fact, the origins are Christian. But it went away in the fact that it decided to put, the reason why it's like human, it's like saying human-centered instead of God-centered or magic-centered. So anybody can be, that's why there's secular humanism, secular in the fact that also, unfortunately, people don't realize secularism also is a Christian idea.
Yeah.
So
Some very strong proponents of it are
so I mean, it's funny how people think now that they say secular humanist, and that means an atheist humanist. That's not even what it means. But now it's almost taken to secular to be non-religious humanism. So,
But I think going back to the proposal that could humanism replace religion, no, it couldn't, because religion fundamentally has something greater than mankind that they want to go worship, which humanism doesn't. So humanism may be a common bond shared across religions and non-religion, but it can't be brought in to replace religion, in my view.
Yeah.
well, if you're trying to replace, a thing to worship, then humanism would fail. But I don't see that. That is a thing that I think that people that are non-religious want to do is worship, or I mean,
Right.
I certainly don't want to worship anything.
No.
So,
Yeah, I don't think the rhetoric of theism doesn't need to be replaced. That can be replaced with reality, but the reality of theism needs to be replaced. That sounds like an oxymoron, reality of theism. What I mean by reality of theism, I mean that the reality of theism is the true basis and practice of it, which is manifest in the community. So you would go and have fellowship with people. This is a real thing. This is something that religion leads to or partakes in or something. That's a thing that definitely needs to be altered and replaced, because if human beings cannot get that except in that unique institution known as the church or mosques or whatever, then there's going to be a need that's not met.
right, I'm an axiological atheist. So this is a big deal to me, because to me, humanism is lacking a bunch of stuff. To me, it's actually not. It's in other words, humanism is like saying, I think that everyone should have equal rights, but it's not any structure to actually produce that. It doesn't give you a moral system. It doesn't say this is good or bad, or how you judge good or bad. It says good is important, but then it doesn't ever tell you how to get good, what should be done. It says that we should care about people and have equality, but it doesn't have any structure to actually establish this. To me, I think that's going to be, and why it's always, as you said, not going to fit the thing, because it doesn't. Where to me, axiology does that. It says this is how you establish good. This is why it's good. This is what's better than other things. I think that humanism can adopt an axiological understanding, and it would provide it a structure that it does not now have. I think this is really important to me. That's why, to me, the other thing is that humanism is the idea that, if, in other words, what religion says is, if we're left to our own devices, we do evil. Humanism is almost the opposite side, that if we're left to our own devices, we'll do good. Neither of those are 100% true. I mean, so...
And some people seem to have the need to be told what is good and what is bad, or what is right and what is wrong. They need a specific gauge to be told to them of whether they're behaving normally or correctly or something like that. I think that that's probably where religion has done its most damage, in that it's given people a very specific set of rules that they have to follow, and everything else is gray area. And so as long as they think that they're following those rules, they're still good people. Just like, one of my sisters-in-law, if she can do whatever she wants as long as she goes to church on Sunday and asks for forgiveness, and she's it's just one of those things that you can't handle. I can't handle people that are so two-faced. If you do something wrong to some individual, you need to go set it straight with that individual and say, I apologize, I overstepped my boundaries, I said something wrong, I did something wrong, whatever it happens to be. And that's the way I was brought up, because I was brought up without religion. My mom always says, if you hurt somebody's feelings, you need to don't tell me you did something wrong. Don't let the teacher tell me you did something wrong. You need to figure it out. What did you do wrong? And now you go say to that person that you're sorry, and And so being raised with the understanding that when you say something, it hurts someone's feelings and they may cry. It's their child, more likely than, they're going to come back, or they're going to want to pop you, for whatever you may have said. You need to figure out what you said and why you overcrossed some boundary that they may have. And, I think that most people figured that they have to be told what the boundary is, and instead of learning from a young age. My son is very empathetic, because he always knew that if he did something wrong, I told him, go take care of it. And either you're going to come back with a black eye, or you're going to have to apologize and find out how you hurt the person if you don't really understand. And I think that you need to train people to understand empathy instead of being told you will be empathetic.
So I wonder, could I go back around to where we started, which it seemed that, Jersey, you were suggesting that we need to devise something to replace religion, something better, as it were. But why? I mean, personally, if people want to follow religion and, worship a God or a Trinity or a tree or 3 rocks at the bottom of the garden, good on them. That's fine if they find comfort in that, or a guide for their life, or a set of rules that they can follow or be kind to their neighbour. That's cool with me. I don't seek to personally replace any of these. As I said, but did I understand you right? Was
Yeah,
that
I
what
think
you suggested?
I think there's actually a lot of answers to the question as to why to replace religion.
Yeah.
And I think all of them have to do with a thorough analysis of what religion is, because the more thorough it's analyzed, the more the defects and the destructive attributes manifest themselves. So, destructive attributes are like what, I forgot your name. Cindy, like what Cindy was saying right there about obedience over morality. And then these communities, they breed this on a very large scale. And then these individuals become productive members in society. They become judges, they become lawyers, they become teachers, and then they start to affect society that way and infiltrate it with, you don't think so?
Well, I was going to say most religions, the one or two that I know about, generally have a moral code, like the Ten Commandments, for example.
But, right, but
which, if you follow, would make you a good person. And the fact that lots of people believe that they can be as nasty as they like, as long as they go and confess to the priest each Sunday and it wipes the slate clean. You can't lay that at the foot of, I suppose you can't. I was going to say you can't lay that at the foot of a fault in religious belief. Maybe you can actually. Maybe that's institutionalized and it's okay for that behavior.
Are you you're saying there's positive attributes, and I
In religion,
believe there
sure,
are, of course, yeah, of course there are positive attributes, and I believe that. My favorite theologian is Reinhold Niebuhr. I think I enjoy reading him. But that being said, that doesn't make it a positive thing in itself. The whole thing is based on a projection. Everything just goes on from there. So,
And each person has the capacity to interpret it differently. And so
Yeah.
you may agree with one person that makes it more agreeable to you to read the material that they've written, but just like the Baptist Church and Westboro Baptist Church, they read everything, verbatim and take it a totally different way, and so they would obviously oppose maybe his writing. So everybody that interprets it slightly differently is going to have a different twist on it, and it all starts from young age training.
and the churches, these community structures, they promote that. They retain it. They keep it going because even if you are not necessarily a believer, you'll go there for the community like a lot of people do, and then you end up becoming a believer. I'm not talking about outlying. I'm not talking about that. That would be an authoritarian maneuver. It should be irrational, and it should be an act where it is replaced with infrastructures that provide better alternatives that are grounded in reality more firmly.
But why do you say that religions are not grounded in reality? I mean,
they're not. Well, first off,
first
I'll answer that question. So
yeah.
you said they're moral. See, and I would say you already, to me, are presenting a thing that's actually flawed because they're actually pseudo-morality. In other words, they copy what looks like morality, but they're not morality. All religions have a thing called sin. Whether it's Buddhism, Jainism, it makes no difference. They all have this flawed thinking. It's pseudo-morality. It says that I can violate consent of myself and I can violate consent of people that give me consent. In other words, it says that I can do an act to myself, by myself, and it's somehow morally wrong, where there's no ethics to that. There's no ethics that says I can do something to myself of my own choosing and I am violating my own code. If you choose to do it, you've given consent. So it says that you can do something to yourself or to another person. Like say someone's gay. You're gay, I'm gay, we both do something. They say somehow it's a sin. How is it a sin? You consent, I consent. There's no violation ethically. So it presents a flawed thing to begin with. And every single one of them does this. They all do this. They invent sin.
So as an example, committing suicide is frowned upon by certain religions.
Yeah, but do you?
And you would say, well, it's entirely up to you, but it has side effects on your family that you leave behind and so on.
Yeah.
So
Well,
nothing-
but someone owns their own body, right? So they have the right to smoke if they want, eat if they want, die if they want, have prostitution if they want, have sex if they want. These are all their choices. You're saying that a person's duty is to their family, is it? Who says that? In other words, I have the right to my own life, do I not? So I can have my own job. I can marry who I want, right? You would. So you make it, not you, but religion makes an arbitrary rule that I have a duty to everyone else, and I can't kill myself. But we need to ask why. Why is that okay? Why do they have the right to say we no longer have consent to us? Why? What gives them the authority? Right? So they present pseudo-morality, authority. And you're said, like, what does religion do? The problem is, people talk about religion in an abstract way. There is no one who has an abstract religion. If you're a religionist, it's not abstract. In other words, it's talked about like this black widow that's just floating in space. How many people, when they're walking through the woods, ever hit the actual black widow or the spider? No, what you hit is the web. And every belief system has a large web of continuing outside. That's what he was talking about. If you believe this, like say you believe religion. Oh, well, they only believe their own thing. No, they don't. They constantly want to grow. So they're constantly giving pamphlets, doing things, talking. They're trying to manipulate people. They don't go, I believe this and I'll affect no one.
They're not Joshua free.
I mean, even the Amish, constantly affect the larger society. You're going to let us have horses. You're going to let us do these. So you have to then follow their rules. Just like there's in Tequila and Seattle here, there's Muslims that want to bathe in the pools, and they want to do it under Sharia law, which is gender, exclusivity. So they'll have where they've now have the state allowing a couple hours where they can go, and the employees have to be of the one gender. No one else can, even like someone needs medical care or help, you either can't go or you have to be the same gender. So our society is being hindered by if people kept their beliefs to themselves, you're right, who cares? But the problem is, they don't.
The power of religion is very, very detrimental to society. It really is. When you think about, for example, here in the United States, you have people who are so religious that they feel like we need to make laws to prevent people, humanists, atheists, or just anybody, from doing something that they consider wrong in their religion. Whether it's Islam or it's Catholicism, I mean, go down and name a whole list of them. But they will for Christians, they will group together, even though they're all separate, they'll group together to fight certain things like gay marriage. They will fight it. They'll all come together, even though they don't agree among their dogmas, but they'll fight that, And it's like, so that affects our nation. That affects equality in our nation.
But humanists, or take some group that also fight and argue the case for gay or non-gay, choose whichever side you want. That's just another group that don't happen to be religious, but a group that's got together as a community to advance their cause, their belief about how society should evolve. So why pick on religious? Why not? It could be any group.
Do you like that somebody in a religious... I'm not sure what you're saying as far as humanism. I don't know what does humanism purport other than freedom that you would not...
So I'm just choosing humanism, but any group that gets together to advance what they believe should be done.
How are they advancing it?
Oh, by, I don't know, taking ads in
Evidence,
television.
rationally. See, that's the thing. This is the answer to your question. The reason why religion is so destructive is because the methodology by which it tries to advance, it's irrational. It's against evidence. It's against the way that we function and live in the world. And then the other thing, the thing that, and I don't want to misrepresent what you're saying, the thing that I hear you saying about the value of religion, this moral idea, that is the very thing that makes it so destructive, is its morals. The morality of religion is the worst thing about it, because that is the part that collides with society. And that's the part that says to individuals, hey, this is what you should do, this is the way you should live, this is the way you should respond, this is the way you should function. And those things go unchallenged. They're just forms of authoritarianism that are passed down. So that's why one of the answers why it's so destruction. Why pick on religion? Ultimately because it divides and it controls people in a way that's destructive.
And society has always deemed it to be untouchable. You cannot offend it, you cannot say anything against it. You better not go up against it because they'll come back at you with teeth that are very sharp. Unfortunately, we know how they behave.
And we have to remember that they are not living in reality. They are not thinking critically. And when they are making these demands on civilization, they are thinking that they're forgetting all the science that we have now come to understand. All the growth. I mean, they want to keep back in the day before, we could fly around Pluto. And,
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
the Dark Ages.
It's like they're trying to stop progress because they don't. Progress frightens them, and you can't. I mean, we can't stop progress because progress is what's moving us forward to a better way of understanding our universe and each other and medically. I mean, it's like, why would they want to do that? But it's because they're afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid of losing their grip over the minds of some people.
So are you saying, for example, a religious group that believes that blood transfusions are a bad thing and won't allow them? But as long as they only affect their own family.
But they don't have that. See, I don't think that they have the right to that. That's like saying a parent has the right to beat their kid.
Right.
Because I feel like the child. So I think that if all religion stopped indoctrinating kids and hurting kids, okay, fine. As long as you kept yourself and you stopped hurting kids, okay, fine. I have no problem with you. The problem is they don't. There's not one religion in the world, no matter what kind of religion it is, no matter how peaceful, Jainism, Buddhism, it doesn't Sikhism, it doesn't matter. They all do the same thing. They all indoctrinate children. They all do it against their will. People say, I choose religion. You never chose religion. It was chosen for you. You were indoctrinated into it. Usually you're threatened, abused, and said, if you don't, you're shamed or humiliated at least. Yes. Because even in Jainism, the belief that you can't kill microbes, so the whole point is to do the least harm to things. And it's inherently sexism. It's amazing how many religions are sexism. They all are. Like even Jainism actually believes a woman's body kills more microbes than a male's body. Yeah, which is just ridiculous. It's like only religion would come up with something so freaking nonsense, and then make it a moral thing that somehow that's the reason men are more moral. It's like it's completely, and to think that we can allow that to go on and to be done against children, against their will. It's
even worse is when they start inserting it into the school text.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Texas is a big, huge state, so it controls the books that the rest of the United States has to choose from because they are the primary. Why don't more schools get together and say we will adopt these books and this is what we want? And so now Washington, California, Oregon, and I don't know, New Hampshire, maybe, or Vermont, something like that. We get together as a collective union of schools and say, we are going to just completely obliterate Texas's power over the textbooks.
Yes, legislated. Yes, it's tyranny. It's a form of tyranny.
And they know it. And that's, and I don't know if that's why people are, maybe there's a lot of people that are flocking to Texas, but I guess I was listening to something, I can't remember where it was at, but they were talking about when Texas became a state, and after I don't know if it was after the Civil War or because of the Civil War, it was at some point where they made a decision that they would agree to, I think it was after the Civil War, to accept the terms of the Civil War's agreement, but they kept the ability to be like an independent almost like a country within the United States, that they could turn down some things. And so these things are starting to creep out of their system, because some people are finding them and saying, oh, this is a great way. We can now say that Texas is going to be an independent union from the rest of the United States, and we are going to push this, and this is our new thing, you know. And it's not just, it may have a huge square mileage, you know, the size of it, but still, if you could get Alaska can, you know, take over Texas and then some, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I went on an Alaskan cruise one time, and that was one of the things that the tour guides laughed about. They said, anybody here from Texas? And, you know, you always get 4 or 5 people raising their hands, and they've all got the big bolo ties on and stuff, you know, and they're all cowboy boots and hats, and they're all very pompous. Not that everybody from Texas is pompous, but that's just the way it was in the bus I was on.
You know,
And they said, how many people in Texas think Texas is the best state, or has this or has that that's above other states? And then they'd say, well, Minnesota has actually this many lakes, and Texas only has 4 or something, you know. And then it was like just a banter of statistics and things that were entertaining while you're on this bus ride going from Denali back to Anchorage, you know. And then they said something about, well, you know, we can always just divide Alaska in half and make Texas 3rd in size. And they just, you know, was like, don't tell us that. They really became agitated, and you could see it. And because I was only like 22 at the time, my friend and I that went on the cruise together, we were sitting there chuckling, because you could see there were mostly seniors. There were mostly people over 60, and they did not like being told this information, you know. So when you have this very, you know, regimented list of things that Texas wants to put on everybody, it overflows, and it starts seeping outward across the United States, especially in education. So we need to do something by saying, you know, I'm sorry that Harcourt, Brace, Jovanovich, whatever the textbook company is, you are going to put in, it's only going to be based on fact, and you cannot just throw crap into it because Texas wants to say that Moses was a founding father, you know. And that is one of the things that is in the new social studies books. Yes, if anybody hasn't watched, you'll have to watch some of the videos on YouTube with Aaron Ra, and he's the lead of the Atheists in Texas, I believe. But he also is very adamant about getting involved in the Texas school books decisions, because he knows the ripple effect that goes across the United States.
I think the big thing with religion in that sense, with dealing with it politically, is the fact that they have a 501c status. Mm-hmm. That's really what allows them to function the way they do. Mm-hmm. If they didn't have that 501c status, you would see the demise of many
Right.
churches.
But even that, I mean, legally they're only supposed to use 501c status for certain things, and yet you have these pastors buying, you know, like 6, 7 homes or whatever, their whole family got home, cars. I mean, it's like, you know, they're completely abusing it, and so I mean, it's way more systemic problem than even if just the church itself.
We have subsidized religion.
Oh, absolutely,
every step of the
absolutely.
way.
Crazy.
Wasn't it till 18 something? I think that I think Massachusetts or something was the last to have a state religion, because there was a federal law that the federal government couldn't establish religion, but before the ratification of something like that of the states or something, there was a law that allowed states to have a state religion, which is it's constantly been a. But now that I know they want to go back to that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They want to make state religion. They want to make the
they-
Bible the state book and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
They keep behaving as though the United States is a democracy, and although we think we have a democratic system, we don't. We have a republic, and that entails everybody to have that freedom, that we can't push anything on anybody. Otherwise, yes, we would all be a Catholic nation at one time, or we would all become a Baptist nation at one time. But the only thing that you can try to do, and I've said it in many arguments on, you know, Facebook posts and stuff, where what are you going to do? Because right now the Muslim population is the highest growing population in religion right now. What are you going to do when they outnumber the rest of us? And it doesn't mean that it's just going to be the current Muslims having children. It could mean that people are converting to it, maybe for whatever reason they choose to, or maybe more people come from those countries and they don't tell what their religion is, and so suddenly you have this huge influx of, you know, more people that are going to tip the scales in their favor numerically. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that people, they don't realize, they keep voicing this, that, well, we outnumber you, so we should be able to do this. There are more Christians on this football field, so if we raise our hand and say we think they should be able to pray to God and have a big Christian brouhaha in the middle of the field with all the players, we think that that's, appropriate. Well, it's not that way. That's not the way the United States was put together. It was put together to preserve everybody's freedom, and that even the one guy that's sitting there at the end of the field that says, no, I don't want it. So, and I've gotten into arguments with friends about that, just simply because they think that, well, we outnumber you. That doesn't matter. Then if you think you can outnumber somebody, then go to a country where that matters. If you think it's just surely 4 against 3 or something, and you have the right because there's one more of you than the other side.
But right now, that's been allowed to actually turn to abuse. As you say, the few, because what's happened is become an oligarchy where the few that's being respected is not the people. It's actually the rich. It's the elite.
Right.
I mean, they are running our country. Money is becoming the ultimate power, and we're protecting it to no matter what. I mean.
Maybe I can rephrase what I think the question you're asking, or what you're getting at, in a way that's kind of I don't know. It presents more of a challenge to me, anyways. So here's the question: should religion be completely obliterated? See, this is a kind of a different question.
I thought that's where you were going.
Yeah. The question is, it's not possible to say that there's absolutely zero value to religion. That's just not possible. So, if that's the case, though, that we say there's zero value to religion, then what is the value of religion? See, that's a harder conversation. Because it's easier to be able to attack the negative attributes. It's much harder to be able to exemplify what are the positive traits of religion. So anyways, I see that as, maybe that's what you were just saying the whole time, maybe I was saying it too, but just put in those terms, it focuses it down. Whereas if you're just talking about things like blood transfusion or something, it's easier to...
Very specific.
Yeah.
No, I think my general point would be that, there's a bunch of religious groups that are not impacting my life or demanding that I need to go to some church every Sunday, right? And they're receiving some value back as a community. Then, for me, why would I want to object?
Because they are oppressing other people.
And
Morality should never just be me focused, because then that's not morality. That's just your own personal persuasion. Morality is really how we affect others, and how we behave with others, and how we see the others, as a group should behave. That's morality. I mean, if it's only about us, then if we're on a desert island, in a sense, we don't have to worry about morality, because there's no one to infringe on. That's why I say that religion, though, would say we can still infringe on ourselves, which is pseudo-morality. There's no such thing. So it's really a behavioral thing that we do. That it's really real morality is how we behave. So, in a sense, you're right. You're a white man. You're probably a white man who's somewhat affluent. You're a white man somewhat affluent, probably, are also getting some kudos because you're older. You're also dressed in a way that is fits the norm. I don't. I have tattoos. I have a red beard. I can be your age and still will not get the credit that a white man will get. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of other social and economic factors that come in. It's not so simple. We cannot, as a moral being, only look through our own lens and think that we're being moral. That there's nothing moral about only sticking to yourself.
This consciousness is so important. Dr. King exemplified it. Many great leaders have exemplified it. And the consciousness is that the individual becomes aware that he is part of a web, and that the value of his life is contingent on the value of the whole. But until that happens, this objectivism, that's what I would call it, this objectivism, this self-centered viewing the world, this apathy, that will be dominant because the person is not have a consciousness of their own existence at that point in time. To be conscious of one existence is to be conscious of the fact that I didn't make the clothes I'm wearing. It's to be conscious of the fact that I don't grow all the food I eat. It's to be conscious of the fact that I'm part of a society, a network of people. And that, there you go, that is what brings in, hopefully, the value to say, well, religion is affecting the whole, even though it's not affecting me in my own private circle.
It teaches you to thank one being for everything you have instead of thanking the thousands that put your life together as a whole.
Exactly.
giving credit to one instead of the many. We are all God, not a figure of God.
I saw this this documentary where this doctor did reconstruction surgery on this girl. She had a giant tumor on her head. It was 16 hours he had to fix the tumor. When her mother and her aunt came into the room, they ran up and they looked at her, and they immediately held their hands up in the sky and said, "Thank you, God." And the doctor was standing right next to him, who had just labored for 16 hours doing that surgery. They didn't even, why did God give her the tumor in the first place? But
All right, so I would say this, that when you say religion is not harmful, religion is like a gun. A loaded gun doesn't always kill people. I mean, it doesn't. If it's sitting here in the middle of the table, it's not going to kill anybody. It's totally harmless. But that's religion. It is a loaded gun. Some maniac is going to pick up that gun and start freaking shooting everybody. But a lot of people say he picks it up, you pick it up, I pick it up. Maybe none of us, we can all touch the gun, and yet the gun itself doesn't do it. But the gun is a dangerous property that will always eventually fall into the hands of someone who will use it like a gun to kill. Always. So I see religion, and it's very evident. There's never been a religion in control that wasn't harmful. I mean, Christianity was a moral terror when it was in control. Muslims, Muslims, to me, is very interesting because you have war at the beginning of it, then you have like science and like learning, and then you have back to war. I mean, it's just it's to prove that it doesn't make any sense. Religion doesn't make any sense. That you can have people that were so learned, so towards, and then go right back. I mean, so when people say that Muslims want to go back to Dark Ages, no, actually they want to go to pre-Muslim. Well, I would say, really, because there was a time when Muslim meant learning, meant that, I mean, it was science meant Muslim.
it shows you
It's
these
just-
beliefs, that these beliefs, they transcend the reason. That
Yeah, they
there's
totally
there's
transcend
that
reason. Oh,
psychological
yes.
cognitive factor that's just gripping onto people that they can't
I wonder
break
if
away
the
from.
population density has something to do with that. Because I think that probably when the Mayflower and all the other little ships pulled into port, they really needed something to unify one another, and they maybe couldn't get people to come together on Tuesday night for a city hall meeting necessarily, but if you made them feel guilty and they had to show up for a church or whatever service was being held, then they would show up and they could find out the status of this person is expecting a baby. We need to get the people in this family together to try to help that family because it's going to be winter when this baby comes. So we need to make sure that she's supported and that she's not going to be able to be working all summer long in the field. So we need to send some of the teenagers from that family over because they've got 7 kids. And, just the sheer numbers that we're talking about people, I think, it's like just like a society of ants or bees. They divide up and they split off and they take off and they divide. But the United States and all these other countries where you have high density population areas, just simply the fact that we have this huge population, that's when you have more diseases crop up, because of the density, you have everything spreads. Well, religion is a disease as far as I'm concerned. It behaves in the same manner, that it afflicts people, and especially families that have large numbers of children. And that is, like the quiverful movement and things like that Christians want to try to pop out as many as they possibly can because God gave them to them, really.
It does strange things to a person's psyche to go from a state of alienation in nature, you're just kind of naturally alienated from nature, and then to go from that state to all of a sudden you have these answers that you can now say to people, well, we're here because of this, what you're doing is wrong, and that does something to the ego with the person where they get empowered. So they have this power that they're pursuing, and they like to be able to use that on other people, to tell other people, to bring them into this, and hey, you can share this power with me. Here's a narrative that will empower you. They don't ask whether or not the narrative is true. That's not
It's
part
an
of
easy
it.
solution in a way that you don't need to figure it out for yourself. You just
Yeah.
do what somebody else told you to do.
It's like Christian apologists who argue against morality. They always create a straw man. They say, can you demonstrate that objective morality exists, all the while assuming that they get that position by default. They just assume that if I ask you that question, I automatically can generate it because my narrative says it's true. So they think they have all this power that they don't have, but I think that that's what keeps people locked in it. And so I think when you alienate that power, when you break up that power, when you go and attack it, you make them feel ashamed in a sense. because they realize that these beliefs that were taken on such authority, with such credibility, they see that there's people who are not affected by that authoritarianism, and then they start to think, then they can distance themselves just enough, maybe, to where they can actually question it rationally, and then reason can actually have some type of impact on them.
But most of the religion really is an enemy of reason, because that's not what they want. They don't want you to think. They want you to follow. They want you to follow what they told you without thinking.
Yes.
And so that is inherently why there will always be a dangerous loaded gun, is because and as far as to me, when people say that religion has value, that we have to see I like axiology, so I love value. I love to analyze what is value, and to say something has value is not an automatic thing that it's good. Something can have some value in it, and it doesn't inherently make it good. I mean, a bald tire is about to pop, is not have value, but yet that rubber could be used. So in a sense, it's not zero value. Dirt actually can grow things. I mean, you wouldn't want to put it in your food.
Right.
I mean, so just because it's a fallacy to say because something has value left that it means it's valuable. It doesn't mean it's valuable. It doesn't mean it's even good. It's like I say that to me. Saying religion has good qualities, that I have to acknowledge it, is like saying I have to acknowledge undigested food particles and vomit. They're there, but they've become so tainted. I certainly don't want to eat it. Again, you know what I'm saying? So to me, the fact that there's something you can find, you can dig through and find a whole bunch of qualities. Yeah, so what? It's so tainted by the whole. You cannot use, it's poison. It's like saying, well, there's good qualities of the Nazism. I mean, Hitler, if you were a white German with blonde hair and blue eyes, Nazism was awesome. You can't fault it. It was absolutely great, you know. If you were a male and you were rich and you were all this, I mean, even better. I mean, your life was absolutely fabulous.
But are you saying that no religions have any good values?
No religions, if you look at it as a whole, are valuable. Because if you have to assess everything. You cannot pick, you cannot go, I'm going to not see everything and look just for a microscope at the one thing. That's why I can say that the cancer virus is beneficial if we implant it in serial killers. You know, so in a sense, I mean, that would be a true statement. So the fact that you can find a true statement in a flawed thinking is constantly happens. I mean, so no religion is beneficial to society. Period. End of story. If you valueize it.
No, I'm not disagree. That's just too broad a statement to be even.
But I could break it down because I told you every religion promotes sexism. I have documented it. I can send you the things.
So let me do one counter example.
Okay.
Most religions advocate that it's not a good idea to go and kill your neighbour.
But yet they do that, so that's not totally true. Because Christianity says you can kill your neighbor if they don't believe. You can kill your neighbor if they do witchcraft. You can kill your neighbor if they fornicate. You can kill your neighbor if they're gay. How many Christians say, "Let's kill the gays"? I mean, so that statement.
The church, so no Christian church advocates going out and killing.
No, that's not true. I can go online and show you people that say we should kill gays.
Really?
Oh hell yes!
Yes.
Oh hell yes!
So, like
Oh,
you said,
hell
again,
yes.
your statement is too broad of a statement. But he phrased it. I was going to say something. He phrased what he said very carefully.
I noticed.
And the way he said it was very important because your reply is an equivocation. What he said is no religion as a whole
Yes.
is
Right.
valuable.
Yes.
That is a very important statement. What you're talking about are the specifics of it. So that's very different.
So let me put it. Are there any parts of any religion that are good?
Well, I already said yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's parts, like I said, there's parts of Nazism. There's parts of cancer that would be beneficial if we used it as an element to interject it into the population of
the
serial
real
killers.
question, though, the hard question is, are they more valuable than other things
Yeah.
that don't require that same infrastructure? See, that's the more interesting question.
I hear you, and I agree that you could devise a better code of morals which were logical and well-founded and objective than religion has, or various religions have so far come up with. That's a heavy rock to roll up a very steep hill.
But the goal is that humanity is valuable. And religion does not start with that thing. The religion starts with superpowers are valuable. Humanity is an aid to superpowers. Religion does not start with humanity. See, that's the about humanism. Humanism doesn't start with the crazy idea that humans matter, that humans have value, that our goal should be human-centered in a sense. All religions are magic-centered. They're other thing. We are just some catalyst towards that promotion. That is, and it's inherently going to never be humanistic, and it's, even if they have humanistic elements, because their goal is not promoting humans. Their goal is not, and if it was, then they would stick to the natural world, because you can't benefit humanity by going to supernatural. You have to benefit humanity in the real world.
Yeah,
you have to make morals in the real world because you have real people being affected.
Otherwise, we'd have an elevator where you make a wish, you push a button, the elevator goes up, it comes back down, and there's everything you need in the elevator when it opens.
See, if
And
supernatural was
that-
proved to be true, then maybe religion would have
that's what would be happening, and we know it's not happening. It's because all those other things made it happen, or God made all those other things come to you by the natural realm, because God can affect the natural realm. Okay, he gave us 3 weeks of sunshine. I have a gardening group on Facebook. Everybody's just talking about how everything's just going wonderful, wonderful. By the 3rd week, everything's bolting. All of my vegetables, they're turning to seed. What's going on? Well, it's because it's too hot. It's too dry. It's too hot. Summer's too short. It's used to a short summer. Now you've got cauliflower that looks like something from outer space because nothing is doing what it's supposed to do. We don't normally have that kind of a sudden heat wave here, but everybody's complaining. My garden is just a waste this year. I can't keep anything alive. If I give it too much water, it dies because it's got too much water. But then if I don't give it water every day, it turns into looks like a bunch of wilted spinach, So everybody's complaining about this, but that's the natural world. Unfortunately, that's why you can things, because then you have next year's, if this year's doesn't work out, you can eat it next winter, because now you have 40 jars of tomatoes or whatever it is you can. And that's what nature is all about, and that's what made it so difficult the first few years when they made it to the United States, because they didn't know what to grow here, and that's why the Indians helped. But the Indians, who were they honoring? Who were they cherishing? They were cherishing the ground and the earth, and that they knew that that's where that stuff came from. They may have looked up at the stars, and just like all of us have done it one time or another, and wondered what's out there and what's beyond it. But it doesn't mean that it has to be something. I've stared up at the sky thousands of times. I used to go camping from the time I was 2 weeks old until I was probably in my 30s the last time. And that's just, it's awesome to be able to go out there and just observe and see what's going on and know that just happens. It doesn't have to, that tree wasn't planted, that one probably was because it's on a landscaped lot, but trees happen. That just isn't nature's thing. When I go out every spring, I see 5,000 little sprouts of maple trees in my yard, and I've got 10,000 fir trees in my roof, because they find any little crack they can get into. Life happens. That's just the way it is. It's persistent.
I find another reason for religion to be a negative is majority of religions cannot face reality. We are going to die. There is going to be an end to us. So they talk or hope for this other life, this afterlife, and they're so busy trying to make sure they get to this other life that they neglect the earth. They neglect all of our natural resources. Oil is just for money, so you can buy more things. They are destroying. And it's not just religion. Believe me, capitalism is right in there with
Capitalism
them.
is manipulating religionists in that way.
Exactly. So here we are, and we have all these people that are actually, when we get to heaven, it'll be okay. And I hear people say that are religious, and I'm like...
Nietzsche called these, that's why he called them afterworldsmen. His point
yes,
was
that's true.
that's what they try to,
Yeah.
they focus
Yeah.
on, it's nonsense, just
Yes.
afterworld. He also has a very powerful statement in his work where he says that you can almost find a criterion of truth in the theologian. He said, whatever the theologian regards as true is false. There you have the criteria. And if you think about it, when you actually start to read theology that way, it's almost the case. You're dead in sin, so the reverse of that is actually the case. No, we're not born into sin. We're not dead in sin. We're moral. We become immoral. Whatever. But I think that's a good, very clear-sighted explanation of it.
Well, the one thing different about science that religion is always harmful is religion won't change. It protects old ideas against new ideas, whereas science welcomes new ideas to remove old ideas. Right. Just like you're talking about, babies. For my book, I also looked up two books. One is The Philosophical Baby. It talks about how babies actually are very young children can actually think in a level that we don't acknowledge. They're actually doing a lot more thinking. There's also one called, I think, The Moral Life of a Baby or a Child or something like that. I can't remember. I had two books. I can't remember what the names are now, but both of the books basically are the same thing, that we have this understanding that we teach morality, like you're saying, about what we're born with. And actually, babies, I think it's 2 months, and the details are not very good, but I think it's 2 months where they start showing moral reasoning. The problem is they actually are prone towards good, but they actually also are prone towards selfishness. So they like me. In other words, like me morality. I like, if you harm something I think is like me, they tend to, it's I wouldn't call that evil, good and evil. I would say barely good, but good me-centered, me-centered good, or good, because they also seem to not like, they had this one thing where they did this like a teddy bear, and they have someone hit the teddy bear, hurt it. And then they have, later the people come in, and the child wants the one that doesn't hurt the teddy bear. I mean, so, but even though they're not going to hurt the child, but there's an imprinting of understanding, and then they show the two animals together, and you can choose a teddy bear. One teddy bear hurts other things, or doesn't. I think it was a box. They had this box, and they're allowed to open and put stuff in, and the other one would go in the box. It wouldn't let them put nothing in there, and the one that would not be a what do they call that? A cooperation behavior. One that was against that. The child didn't want to play with that almost universally. The things that work together. The child, but still, to me, it's kind of a us morality in the sense that I want someone who will work with me. If they won't work with you, you probably won't. That's probably not going to work out for me. But it still shows, that the child has a reasoning that they're thinking, and also they had this one thing where they did children, where they wanted to show that they have. We believe we teach children everything. This is also somewhat flawed, and we think that animals somehow can just get up and start running and doing. But our human babies just completely like this blob of human flesh that has no mind at all. Totally false. They took this baby and they put it on a table. It's a glass table, and they part of it's not glass. You know what I'm talking about?
I know.
I
We
know.
watched it.
I
won't go on.
No, it's good.
It's interesting. I taught preschool, so I.
Anyways, I won't go. I know a lot of stuff. I won't go into all
That's
this stuff. But anyways, I'm just saying that. But they showed that the baby understands falling before it's being shown, and if you try to push it onto the glass, the baby freaks.
Yes.
It's,
and
they've never fallen. They've never fallen,
Yes.
and the fact that they can see through, they understand. Even though they can touch it, the fact they can see through, they understand what.
Well, that tells you that a baby is more intelligent than a person who goes after religion.
Yeah,
right?
true. Well, religion helps teach you to unlearn, unthink, unlearn, and just follow. Like I said, authoritative. They follow for the reason of following. It inherently will always be somewhat destructive, even if only destructive. Like you said, let's say that it doesn't hurt you. Let's say it hurts no one in this room. But let's say it hurts, say Jersey's religious, and it really hurts Jersey. Do we have any moral obligation in society to try to help Jersey, or at least to inform him? And I think that, so I agree with him. I don't want to get rid of religion and the fact that outlaw it, but I want to reason with people because I know it's hurting them. Yeah. It's not, even if it hurt no one else.
Right.
It's hurting them. And as a caring person, do I not care about my fellow person? Am I not? It's not an obligation. It's a care. I care about them. They have the right to choose, but I feel like that I have an obligation to care and then tell them, hey, you don't have to be this way, and these are the reasons why. Because a lot of them don't know. I mean, like me, I was 36 years. I was a religionist. It was only until I went to college and they said, "Hey, this is the," and I was like, "Wow."
Do you feel that going up to somebody, Jersey, an example, that's unhappy because of religion imposing crazy ideas and putting them into, do you feel that by enlightening somebody and saying, "Hey, it's okay, you don't need to be religious," that you might end up casting them loose So that in fact they were happy. Well, they might have been happier, but they ended up more unhappy because they didn't have that framework round about them that kind of marks them along
Yeah,
the
yeah.
street, knowing what to do,
Yeah.
and they feel secure in that straitjacket.
I've thought
So
about that.
if a baby likes eating candy instead of broccoli for all meals, do you feel any moral obligation to tell them? Do they like candy better?
Indeed.
Right? Of course they like candy better. So do you have any moral obligation to tell them, hey, candy's not helpful. Candy's not you're gonna have more problems. So yes, religion could be like candy. It does taste good for some people. It even feels nourishing to some people, but it's not really nourishing.
It gives a quick
We know
satisfaction,
objectively-
that's it.
We know objectively it does you harm, but in the case of religion, in Jersey's case, do we know that it's doing them harm, that it would definitely be better if they came out?
I will tell you a story about how I was indoctrinated as a child to Catholicism. Okay? My mother decided through somebody's advice to send me to Catholic school. And first grade, I remember this so strongly because it changed my life. It changed my personality. So I'm 6 years old, and I'm sitting in a classroom, this big classroom. None is teaching me, or us, all of us. And the first thing she wants to talk about is sin. I don't know anything about sin. I don't know anything about sin or hell. I know about God. I mean, I do know about God and that there's supposed to be a heaven, but no one's, pushed it on me to this point. So she is talking to this class of 6-year-olds and telling them, some of them for the first time probably have heard this, like me, every time you lie, every time you disobey your parents, you have something that's called a soul. And so she draws a circle on the blackboard. And you lie, and you get a black mark. You disobey your parents, there's another black mark. You hit your sister, your brother, there's another black mark. She said, if you die, this is exactly what she said. If you die with those sins on your soul, you will burn in hell. That's what she said to this class. I was petrified. I went home, I had nightmares. And because I had family members who I knew were not Christians. They didn't go to church. They didn't like church. And I mean, you hear your adults talk. My dad was an atheist. Say, I don't believe in God, So I was petrified, not only of myself, but that my families were going to burn in hell. I would have these horrible dreams and wake up crying. Now, that's what religion does to indoctrinate a child. Telling them these kind of things. That's horrible. That's child
It is.
abuse.
It's awful.
I've never got over it.
I've been able to. I had some exchanges with some people that are like professors,
Yeah.
and they wanted me to feel guilty or sorry in the midst of the exchange that I was doing something wrong to them. And I replied back and I said, I just want to be clear to you that I don't have any pity for you at all, because you teach children that hell is a real place and that they're going to go. And so I've addressed that in talking with theists before. It's like,
It's very powerful.
And I've heard a Catholic too one where they even worse than that, because that's actually saying you've done something wrong. I've heard ones before where they have this little thing and they open it up. It's like an origami and there's a little black heart in the center, and they say you were born evil. You're
Yeah.
born with
Oh,
a
yeah.
black heart.
Yeah.
If you don't do something, whether even if you do all good, if you never do anything bad, you still have a black heart. You still are going to hell. There is no hope unless you get saved. I mean, I've heard that too, which is even more horrid. So even if you lived a great life and didn't do any sins, you're still going to hell.
this is this problem of authoritarianism, because a healthy child should go, how do you know that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what
really.
a healthy, but that's not what happens, because authority comes in and they just submit to the authority. So
And you're not to question
You're
either.
not.
It's,
Yeah.
it's something that
Right,
it's
right.
not permitted. If you question it, that alone is a sin.
Yeah.
And, you're questioning the authority,
The authority.
the grand authority.
Right, and so that's a good question. Authority also, axiologically, what you should say is, even if it's true, even if there's a hell, even if there's a God, even if Christianity is the correct religion, or Muslim, or whatever, it doesn't even matter. Even if all that is true, how does that make the person who is a god created hell a moral being? I mean, it's not. I mean, axiologically, I don't see how you can justify that that's a moral being.
Yeah.
Here's a being that says that all crimes deserve life torture. I mean, we wouldn't even justify that in our American system if someone's a serial killer. We either put them on death row or keep them away, or we execute them immediately. We don't life torture. I mean, it's certainly, who would deserve that? I mean, the fact that every crime is life torture proves it's not a moral being immediately. I mean, that's not. There's.
But who said that any god that you choose was a moral being?
I'm saying they're not. I mean,
that's what people claim.
They claim they're the highest
Everyone's
moral
claiming-
being.
Right.
Show me a theist that claims that their God is immoral. You know what I mean? They don't exist.
No.
The
Every
devil's
theist.
immoral.
Right, but even in a sense, a Satanist worships the devil as a moral being.
Yes, exactly.
Because they say the
Right.
devil's a moral being
Listen, I
because
always,
it allows people to do what they want. It
C.S.
doesn't hurt
Lewis,
them.
his wife died. C.S. Lewis, his wife died. He had a moment of clarity there, just for 1 second, where he was coming out of the fog. And he said, the danger is not giving up belief in God, because he couldn't do that because he's psychologically attached. He said the real danger is in coming to realize what kind of God he is.
Right.
So he had a little moment of clarity there, but he just goes away from it real quick, you know.
Yeah, you have to kind of, and that's why I like the epistemology videos that Peter Boghossian, and there's another, I can't think of the guy's name. He just walks around in this school, like a common area, and he does videos of just talking to people, you know, can I ask you questions about your belief? And he carries a clipboard, and he has a smart cam on it. It's not on his head, because it's right at the same height as most of the people. But he videotapes, and he just talks to them, but he doesn't say anything to them about what they're right or wrong about. He just asks them questions that makes them dig into themselves to find the answers and to verbalize why they think the way they think, so that it gradually starts, you know, well, I'll be here next week if you want to think about it. If you don't have to answer it right now, because it might be difficult. It's a lot you have to think about to answer that question. So, you know, if you see me here, come up to me again and we'll talk. And they do. There's other people that have come up to him many times. I can't remember the guy's name right now. But I can just sit there and watch these interviews for hours, because it just teaches you to, instead of throwing stuff at people, ask them why. And what, you know, if you buy a car, what do you look for when you're buying a used car? Everybody's bought a used car at some time in their life. Well, you look at the mileage, and, well, how do you know that the mileage was not turned back on the odometer? How do you know these things? Well, you would take it to a competent mechanic, and you would have them look at things, and you would have them evaluate the electrical system, and I said, you know, he'll say, well, so in other words, you would ask for evidence that shows that the car is in good working condition and isn't going to fall apart in 200 miles. Well, yeah, that, and plus that it's safe. You want to make sure that it has a history of being a safe vehicle and doesn't have a lot of recalls and stuff. So you're using evidence from people, you know, just using the word. You don't have, and well, that makes sense. Well, what is your reasoning behind your belief then? If, you know, what are the key things? Because if you can convince me that those are the things that might convince me, I want to know about them. And so it's a way of just encouraging the person to dig deep and to come up with real evidence that, well, I've seen these miracles. Well, what specifically? Oh, I've just seen lots of them. Well, just give me one. If you've seen lots of them, you can surely think of one. Give me one that did you actually witness the curtains opening and you hadn't been drinking or anything like that? You know, you witnessed the curtains opening and you saw somebody coming into the room that looked like either your God or Jesus or whatever. But these people were like, no, nothing like that. I just feel it. It's so real. Well, haven't you ever gone to a concert? Maybe it might be Rod Stewart. And you get goosebumps because it's just so exciting. It's so fun to be there, and you feel this. And the guys are like, well, yeah, is that the same feeling? Well, yeah, it's very much like that. Kind of like that, but a little deeper. Well, so how did you acquire this feeling? You know, and was it while you were in church? Well, yeah, when I go to church and everybody starts singing, it makes me feel that way. Well, do you think it could be just the drawing together of people and the common voice and just the fact that you hit certain pitches and your body gets goosebumps? And that's kind of the way it works. You know, you hear something. I've walked through crowds and I've smelled there was a woman I walked by in a Macy's one day, and she smelled just like my grandmother. My grandmother died when I was 18, so I'm like, I want to know what that, but by the time I turned around, I don't know which woman it was that walked by me. And I could have, if I could have frozen the moment, I could have maybe taken the closest 15 women and said, can you tell me the perfume you're wearing? Because I just want to know the name. But those things that people don't look for within themselves as to what gives things meaning, they would rather assign it to their Bible teachings or whatever things they are that they hold dear. Or is it just the fact that you like the feeling you're getting from it? Because you can get that sometimes from a really good piece of cake too, depending on how good it is and how long it's been since you've had a piece of cake or whatever, it's going to give you just the same pleasures maybe that feeling you get when you're in church. And don't go after the feeling, go after the true facts of it. Look for the facts in it. So Peter Boghossian wrote the book How to Create Atheists, the Manual for Creating Atheists. And I haven't finished the book because it really started getting into a lot more detail. And I thought, I want to read this again because I want to not memorize, but I want to have it become kind of like second nature to ask these questions and format them in a way that it's not pushing my ideals onto people, but to have them, why do you feel this way? What is it that makes you...
Have you ever tried to kind of find a Christian or whatever and kind of poke them like that and I've done it once or twice with relatives, and eventually all it comes back to, well, it's a matter of faith. I don't have evidence.
Right.
I just believe.
Right.
There's no, you can't go further than
Yeah,
that.
but see, what you do is you find out when people stop it. Okay, you want to buy that car again, that used car. You don't buy it on faith because you think that salesman's so nice. He just seems so trusting. Well, who hasn't seen a car salesman that doesn't look trusting and who really wants you to buy that car? They're going to say anything you want to hear. So that's the reason behind it. And I think that most people, if you, in this, that's in Peter Boghossian's book, is you just take a little nick out of the faith and make them question the reasons that they have faith, and let them dismember it, not dismember. And if they start questioning their faith and the reasons behind their faith, and what is faith, and that's why he says faith is believing something without evidence, and that's simply all it amounts to.
Or he calls it claiming to know things you don't know.
I need to deconstruct this Boghossian myth because his book is flawed. His method is flawed. And I'm going to say why, just straightforward. He has a presupposition in his approach that you can reason the person out of their...
Right,
which
and you can't.
Which you can't do this.
No.
You have to first alienate them. This is what happened to C.S. Lewis when he said that, what type of God is he? He got a life experience that allowed him to become separate from his psychology to some extent. So if you just have the assumption that you can reason people out of this and there doesn't need to be some type of experiential collision, that is a flawed methodology. It's not entirely flawed. Right. There are some people that will respond to that.
Right.
But as just painted all the way across the board, to me it doesn't alienate enough. And that's what the theists want you to do. I've had lots of dialogues with them, lots. And every single dialogue, they always come back to a moral position. They try to argue that I demand respect, that they demand respect by default.
Yeah.
If you give them that respect, they can already win. They can already retain their position just by getting the respect.
Right.
Because they don't deserve the respect to start out with. So I'm not saying we are belligerent or anything.
Right.
I'm just saying we don't pretend that an absurd claim is not absurd.
Right.
We are totally real when they make an absurd claim like that. We mock it. We do whatever.
Right.
That will hopefully create some alienation, some distancing from their beliefs, so they can maybe at that point apply reason and actually question.
Right. Nobody wants to be laughed at for their opinions or their beliefs, and
Well, I don't think you have to laugh at someone.
Right.
I think you can hold them accountable. I talked to you about this, about when you do like drug and alcohol intervention. I took several classes on how to do intervention. And one of the things that you do is you confront their behavior and what it does straightforwardly. You don't beat around the bush, and you don't allow them to get away. Say, well, my excuse is, your feeling towards that is this, but this is what it produces. 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 It doesn't even matter the why. It's what's the outcome of that.
Well, don't forget Mencken, though. Don't forget Mencken. One horse laugh is worth 1,000 syllogisms. because it is sometimes. I was talking to Jehovah's Witness in the bookstore, and I was laughing at him as he was trying to tell me about the resurrection. And he got mad and he said, why are you laughing at me? I said, well, with all due respect, you're trying to tell me that this person that lived 2,000 years ago rose from the grave. I said, that's comical. There's no empirical evidence to back that up. It's preposterous. But he kept on, he just wanted me to respect that. And my act of disrespecting it was alienating him.
Right.
So that then maybe when I start to apply more critical thinking, he might lose that respect for that authority there.
Or make him worse, you can never tell, can you?
It's
might
true.
just put his back
It
up.
could. Yes, it could. It could do the opposite.
Right, so my thing though is that I always try to make sure that my behavior is to my standard. I don't really, in other words, I'm not trying to change your thinking. You don't change, that's your choice. I want to present, like I was saying, I want to present the stuff so that you then have it so that if you want to change. I don't require people to change their thinking. I will not stay around behavior that does not change though. If your behavior is unacceptable, I won't stay around it. But I don't require people to change thinking. I do require you to change your behavior, which goes back to me, the addiction thing. You need to stop drinking or doing drugs. You can still think that doing drugs is the greatest thing in the world, but you need to change your behavior. It's hurting your family, it's hurting society or whatever. It's a behavioral change. I require behavior. And that's what, to me, religion has to be demanded.
Well, religion
I
is also
demand
addictive.
religion to change their behavior. Demand it. You will start treating people like humans. You can still think they're inhuman, but you're going to start in this society, or you're
You
going
have to behave.
Yeah, you have to behave.
Yeah.
So I know Boghossian wants to attack the thinking, which I think is important, but I care more about changing your value, what you think is valuable, and that what's valuable is that we need to behave. But once it goes back to, like you said, morality.
Yeah.
How we behave is morality.
Yeah.
I demand religious to start behaving moral.
That's what you're saying is far superior. It really hits the nail directly on the head, because before the belief, there's a value
Yep.
that allows the belief to exist.
That's
So,
right.
Yeah, if you just deal with the thinking, then you would just be dealing with the secondary issue.
Correct.
So yeah, I really like what you said. I really agree with it. It's good, really good point.
So it's okay if they change their behaviour, but they've still got these crazy beliefs inside their head.
Well, but think of it this way. Can we make all atheists, you talked about this last time, can we make atheists all come together as a group? We're not going to. If our goal is to make all atheists think the same, we already lost. We're never going to win. But if our goal is that we all respect humanity, and we all behave in a way that respects humanity, that absolutely we can do. And that we can do, I mean, just like, it's like saying, how many people follow the speed limit? I mean, does everybody believe in the speed limit? Or do we need everyone to believe in the speed limit? No, we don't need everyone. We need everyone to behave, though. And yes, in the long run, most speed limits, not all, some are arbitrary, but some like a school zone. I mean, I've seen in the United States in Chicago, they had one 55 miles an hour school zone. School zone, 55 miles an hour. Why even put sign up for school zone? I mean, it's like a freeway,
Yeah.
So, because if you were using the care of humanity, it wouldn't be 55. Because what you're saying is people's desire to go fast is more important than the children. And to me, that's completely not moral. I demand that you're moral. It should be 25, whatever. I mean, whatever your inconvenience. I'm sorry, the kids' lives are more important than your convenience. I'm sure people want to go fast. I mean, always. So the reason we have the desire, the value has to be humanity. And we have to demand that everyone, I cannot change everyone's thinking. I can't even make every atheist think the same. But I want to demand that atheists behave like they have axiology, even if I can't make them all understand it. You need to behave like the value structure of what you're doing has the thing of why it's important. We follow the law only because we get a ticket, or do we follow the law in the school zone because we care about kids too?
Well, that begs the question then, do Christians really believe what they say? Do they really believe
Most
that this
don't.
is the only life? I mean, They certainly don't live like that.
No, most don't. Well, it's like when people say that they believe in skepticism to the point of they doubt reality. Really? So you don't plan your breakfast, for a week in advance? You'll make sure there's gas in your car? Really? I mean, it's not real. I mean, you don't care, what happens to your kids' safety? I mean, you don't make sure you save some money for retirement? I mean, you do nothing? I mean, no one lives that reality. It's a claim that it really is just false.
Just pure
Just like
abstraction.
if everyone really, like Mike, believed that the end of the world, Christ was coming back or whatever, in 5 years, then people would act totally different. And you see some fanatics do this. They'll sell everything or whatever, They act like it actually is real, But every time that happens, it's a pretty bad thing, Everyone else goes, "Woo, I don't know if I'd have done that,"
It's kind of like the Pigpen in the Peanuts series, He lives in his own little dust ball world and never sees beyond that because it's kind of foggy on the outside edges, And I think that that's the way a lot of people are. They live in a clouded world that infuses religion from every corner, and so they can't see beyond it. They no longer know how to exist as just a human. They don't have any concept of it. They have to be told how to think, what to do, what to dress, where to go, who to associate with and who not to associate with. It's one of those things when you finally say on your Facebook page that you're an atheist, you see people drop off like flies, and I don't really care anymore because I realize now that those people were not. Most of them were just friends that I played games with online anyway, so it wasn't a big loss. But it was neat to see the people that stuck around because most of my friends on Facebook now that are admitted atheists, they're almost all in England. They're almost all from Europe. They don't have the same things that we have here going on with this, animosity towards just the word atheist. And unfortunately, my dad.
I was going to say, do you reckon that's a US thing? This antagonism towards the word?
Oh, well, just since, the last 10, 15 years, it's become that much more prolific. But when I was a kid, friends would say something about, I'd say, you want to come over and spend the night Saturday night? You had a couple of friends come over, and you wake up in the morning and you play with Barbies until noon. And they'd say, oh, no, I have to go to church. Oh, don't you go to church? No, I don't go to church. Oh, okay. So it wasn't a big deal. Nobody said anything about it. It was never an issue in the 60s when I was growing up.
But you mean here? Because depending on where you're living in the United States, that's totally not true.
I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. So
well, I grew up in Southern California.
Right.
My parents were in a religious cult.
But it kind of depends, and it could be just a neighborhood. There was a Catholic church was the closest church to me, but it's not like it is here in Washington. You drive up and down any street, and you see church, and it's almost becoming like some of the smaller cities in Texas now. And then you've also got this idea that if you send your kids to a Catholic school, they're going to get a better education. Well, why is it then that only certain colleges will accept transferred credits from high schools that are Christian or Catholic or whatever the thing is? Because they don't meet those requirements. They refuse to jump onto the bandwagon and say, these are the requirements of education that we require for you to be admitted to this college. People don't realize that. And they think they're getting a better education. Why? Because they got A's? Is that how it works?
No.
Our education system is freaking atrocious.
But it's only gotten worse because of the restrictions and that they're trying to make them jump through very specific hoops. Instead of just letting kids learn and want to learn, they're trying to force it in through a funnel into their head. And you can't just fill their brain with information and have it stick. And then you've also got if people really like history, let them cram that into themselves when they're an adult and they really can focus on it, and that's what they want to focus on. But when my mom and dad were in high school and junior high school, they had to learn this much about history. When I got there, I had to learn this much about history. When my son got to high school, he had to learn this much about history because so many huge things happened along the way, and they had to be very specific with it. Well, something has to go along the route. You have to eliminate some of the excesses, or you're going to end up. You can't expect everybody to know what happened up to this point, plus this, plus this, plus this, and as time goes on, you can't have those expectations are unrealistic. So saying that every child needs to know this, it shouldn't necessarily matter, and I think that's You know, my son was well out of school when the Common Core stuff started, but most of the people I know online that really throw a fit about Common Core are religious, and I wonder why. You know, I don't know is it that they're trying to say that it's no longer important, or they want to have more religion brought into the schools, because they're fighting it. They're really balking at a lot of it. And I haven't seen a lot of expectations that are unrealistic with the few Common Core examples I've seen. You know, teaching kids to think outside of the box is great. It's one of the first things that my parents taught me, was to think outside the box. Just because you work in a certain environment doesn't mean everything must exist in your life in that box. There's other things on the outside. So unfortunately, for some kids, the only thing that they get is what comes out of a religious box, and so that's all they know. They have no realistic expectations, just what the church has guaranteed them or told them they're going to get.
But schools aren't just focusing on teaching; they're also focusing on teaching authority, teaching submission. I mean,
Right.
to me, that they're not. I don't consider them to be 100% productive, no matter Common Core or not Common
Right.
Core. I mean, they don't produce intellectual growth as much as they produce copying behavior. So I mean, I think that's not very productive in the long run. I mean, we need to produce real intellectual curiosity, not just copy this, paste this, copy this, paste this, copy this, paste this. I mean, it's not benefiting the mind. It's like a lot of people learn stuff when they go to college. Why aren't they learning stuff in high school? Why do we allow it to be a place of non-learning? I mean, it's yeah. But also to me the whole problem is it's not even like, forget Common Core also I agree is an issue, but like in Southern California, if you go, I was in Irvine, right? One half of Irvine is poor in a sense, the other half is rich in the same city. The schools are not equal. When I was at the poor side, we could not afford to have cheerleaders. These other people, we had to pay for our own uniforms. I was on the wrestling team. The other people, they get their uniforms paid, and they have they can pay for a bus for all these cheerleaders, all the uniforms and stuff, and they give. I mean, it's the same city, and it's both public schools. I mean, they're both public schools. It's ridiculous. In the same city, and you have, one where they have nothing, and they don't have everything, and we think that is okay. And to me, it's just, yeah, it's just that. And it's funny too, because like my sister, she moved around her kids, right? So she was out in the desert area of California. Then she went to Santa Barbara. In the desert area, her kids were in advanced classes. She's like so happy. She thinks she's doing so good. She's a Christian, by the way. Anyways, she goes to Santa Barbara. They held them back a grade almost, because they said, you do not know enough. But Santa Barbara's like rich and affluent, and and so she thinks her kids are great, and they get over there and they said, your kids are idiots. Why don't they know enough stuff? They don't hardly know anything. What are you even teaching them?
I recommend that every person watch The Wire if you haven't seen The Wire, because it goes to the infrastructure of society and really shows you kind of the way that the system is set up by inequality and what happens if you're in that class of inequality. You can't.
Is it a self-produced documentary by?
It's an HBO series.
HBO? Okay.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's about drugs in Baltimore and.
Yeah, but they go through the whole thing. They go through the political system, the school system. They go from
Just
the
one show, or
streets.
is it a series?
I would say that I think
Five.
it doesn't start so much doing political, but I think
It
about
kinda
halfway
starts
through, and
visual, I
especially at the
think. Yeah.
end, it absolutely is a lot more about it's just
Yeah.
pushing a message. Definitely,
Yes,
I think the
it is.
beginning is about drugs and stuff, but then at the end, or the middle, the people I think realize, wow, we can use this as a platform,
Yeah.
and then I think at the end they actually did. First, there's an idea of using it as a platform, and then I think there's a deliberate intent to actually do two things. Number one, just expose the idea, but offer the idea for change.
Yeah.
How we can solve this. That's what, at least to me, I agree that I started liking it more as it
of course.
went
the
on.
first season was hard to watch. Yeah, but it makes people aware. It makes them more conscious. I mean, people don't grow up in the projects. Other people do. If you don't grow up in the projects, you don't know what that's like. People go, oh, go out and get a job. How are you going to get a job in the projects? What are you going to do out there? So that kind of highlights that, struggle that people have.
All right.
I need to leave.
Bye.